brought this along for name recognition. I paid for it. Might as well get some use out of it. How are y'all this evening? Thanks for having me here. I'll talk quickly because I know you guys don't want to stay here too much longer. Let me just say that if Mr. Marshall were running for Congress in the 7th District, I wouldn't be doing this. So, as she noted, I am from Richmond, Virginia, born and raised, currently living in Chesterfield County, and I'm a substitute teacher right now in Chesterfield County. And I hope to be teaching full-time if, depending on what happens on June 12th. So, real quickly, what Mr. Marshall was saying, I want to second in the sense that the Constitution is why I'm running. One of the things I want to point out when it comes to our civil liberties, and he did an excellent job of pointing these things out, the National Defense Authorization Act. Now, when that was voted on, we roundly abused those who voted for it, and we, when Obama signed it into law, we were stunned, we couldn't believe it, and we said, one more assault on the Constitution and our rights. How many people in here know that my opponent, Eric Cantor, voted for that bill? Yeah. Eric Cantor voted to usurp your rights under the 4th, 5th, and 6th Amendment. Now, last Saturday, I was at the 7th District Convention in Short Pond, and I spoke there about the NDAA. And afterwards, I went up and shook hands with Mr. Cantor as he was there. And he looked at me in all seriousness and he said, you mischaracterized the NDAA. You did. I said, no, sir. I read the law and I know what it says. And I described it accurately. At that point, we parted ways. Well, if I mischaracterized it, then Mr. Marshall, you've mischaracterized it, haven't you? No, sir. We have not. And Judge Andrew Napolitano says we have not. And a federal judge says that we have not and has ruled it unconstitutional. My point being, we have a Republican creed, do we not? Anybody in here remember the creed? That the federal government must preserve individual liberty by observing constitutional limitations. Good words. I like those words. I'd like to see my representative govern according to those words. But in his career, he has voted for things like H.R. 6166, the Military Commissions Act of 2006, which gave more authority to the executive branch and military tribunals on U.S. citizens. It was the precursor of the NDAA. And as Mr. Marshall so aptly pointed out, Congress is supposed to declare war. The President, as the Commander-in-Chief, prosecutes the war once it has been officially declared. H.R. 6166 gives more authority to the President to decide when we'll go to war or not, and takes that away from Congress. The NDAA we've already covered. The Federal Aviation Administration Reauthorization Act just last year now allows unmanned flying drones to spy on U.S. citizens. How many of you were aware of that? Okay. So these unmanned drones that we're using to launch bombs over in Pakistan and Afghanistan can now be used to spy on us, thereby rendering null and void our 4th Amendment rights. Mr. Cantor voted for that. H.R. 347, Federal Restricted Buildings and Grounds Improvement Act of 2011. The Secret Service may now determine whether or not you may protest at any event where someone that they are protecting is speaking. Anybody here in the Tea Party? No. All right, some people in the Tea Parties. How many of you have ever been to Washington, D.C. to protest against something? Well, guess what? If the person you go there to protest now has Secret Service protection and the Secret Service decides they don't want you protesting, you got to go or you're going to be arrested. Mr. Cantor voted for that. There goes your First Amendment rights. Peace is best preserved through a strong national defense, another part of our Republican creed. Do you know we have more soldiers now on the border between North and South Korea than we do on our own southern border? Does that make sense to anybody else in here? Because it sure doesn't to me. We've got, I'm sure you've seen the news stories where among active duty personnel, suicide rates are at an all-time high. You've seen that. Why do you think that is? We've been in Afghanistan 10 years, Iraq 10 years. We just got through bombing Libya. We're talking about bombing Iran. We're in Somalia now. We've got troops on the ground there. They're just training. They're just observers. Anybody remember how we got started in Vietnam? Folks, this madness has got to stop. And we have got to start holding accountable the people who allowed this to happen. And I'm going to say some things that may not sit well with some of you because I know I'm at a Republican meeting here. I'm running as a Republican. But we've got to recognize that we're not in the mess we are in now only because of Democrats. I know that's hurtful to say. Some of you don't want to hear it. But just like the drunk who won't get help until he hits rock bottom, we have got to start to recognize that part of the problem is in our own party. And we've got to start holding these people accountable. Now, how do we do that? Well, you don't keep voting for them. How many of you had kids? How many of you raised children? When your kids were throwing a ball around the house, and you don't throw the ball in the house, and they threw the ball again, did you go, if you throw the ball one more time, I'm going to tell you not to throw the ball again. Is that how you did it? You punished them, didn't you? Whether it was timeout or a swat on the butt, you took action. What I'm saying to you is, my representative, my opponent, Eric Cantor, for all of his rhetoric to the contrary, is not a conservative. He does not adhere to his oath to the Constitution, and he does not adhere to the Republican creed. Now, I am his opponent. I am running against him. I hope to unseat him. So you expect to hear me say these things, don't you? Don't believe me. Google it. Look it up. Check his voting record. See me before you leave here tonight. I can give you at least 3 websites you can go to that have his voting record listed. And you can look for yourself. And when you look at these things that he has voted for and passed, like the NDAA or CISPA, where they can invade your privacy on your own computer now. Sorry?
TARP.
Well, TARP, he voted for TARP, yeah. And I haven't even gotten to the economic stuff yet. I'm not talking about civil rights right now. So if any of you like to use your computer for work now or surf the internet, the Cyber Intelligence Sharing and Protection Act says that the government can now spy on you without any Fourth Amendment rights. Mr. Cantor voted for that. Now, folks, again, I'm asking you, I'm begging you, this is not about me. Just as Mr. Marshall said, and bless his heart, I love what he said. It's not about me. I don't want to be a career politician. I don't want to spend the next 20 years in Washington, D.C. I've got things I'd rather be doing. And I'm not kidding when I say, if Mr. Marshall were up here doing what I'm doing, I wouldn't be running. But nobody's challenging the status quo. Just as Mr. Marshall hopes to challenge it, so do I, from a different angle. My representative is not doing what he says he's going to do. If he were the man he claims to be, I would not be running against him. Now, when it comes to the economy, the free enterprise system is the most productive supplier of human needs and economic justice. Again, from our creed. Then why do both parties keep tinkering with the economy? Why do they think that solutions come from the government? They don't. As Ronald Reagan so aptly said many years ago, the government is not the solution, the government is the problem. So every time you hear a Democrat or a Republican say, we have a bill, read government intervention. What they need to do is get out of the way and let you, the free market, the entrepreneurs out here, and I know they're out here. I used to be one. My family and I used to own 3 supermarkets in Richmond. I had my own private security services business for a while as a private investigator. So there are people out here who want to start businesses, who want to grow businesses. And my opponent just recently touted his 20% tax break for small businesses. Everybody remembers that? A couple of questions. Why just 20%? Why now? And why for only 1 year? Now, if you own a business, are there any business owners in here? All right. Are you going to grow your business based on the fact that for 1 year you get a 20% tax break? Knowing at the end of that year they're going to have to reauthorize that thing and it may or may not pass. Is that the kind of solid base you're looking for to grow your business on? It's smoke and mirrors, folks. I'm not going to try to blow smoke up your pants, okay? I'm going to tell you, as a former business owner, I know what it takes to run a business. And I want to get the government out of your way, get the regulations out of there, bring businesses back to this country that have been chased away because of the tax burden and the overregulation, and let you guys grow your businesses and get back to work. Fiscal responsibility and budgetary restraints must be exercised at all levels of government. How many people here think that Obama's stimulus spending is a good idea for growing the economy? Anybody? Can you say TARP? All TARP was a stimulus plan by another name. That's all it was. It was George Bush's stimulus plan. Now, if you believe in the Constitution and the proper role of the federal government, there is no way you can look me in the eye and tell me that TARP was a good idea. It's unconstitutional. And anybody with a modicum of education who has read the Constitution knows that. PEPFAR, the President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief. Anybody remember that one? $55 billion to Africa so they could fight AIDS on that continent. My opponent voted for it twice. And going back to TARP, not only did he vote for it twice, the first time TARP was voted on, you know the Republicans as a majority rejected TARP. I've got video on my website of Mr. Cantor lambasting his own party, fussing at his people for not passing TARP the first time. So when it came up for the second vote, they fell in line and passed it. Now, we all agree that AIDS is a bad thing, don't we? And we should help those who may get it or do have it. But isn't that something that should be done through charity? Is it charity when the government makes you do it? Is it the proper role of the federal government under the Constitution to take your tax dollars and decide who gets it and who doesn't? Is it the proper role of the government under our Constitution to decide which private sector industry survives and which one does not? That's not the proper role of the federal government. My opponent has raised the debt ceiling 8 times since he's been in office. The last time was August of last year. He raised it $2.1 trillion. Now, along with that, we were supposed to see $2.4 trillion in cuts to offset that. Has anybody seen any of them? Can anybody tell me where any of those cuts are? I haven't seen them. And I'm not just asking this rhetorically. I'm serious. If you know where any of these cuts are, would you please email it to me? Because I would love to know where they are. I've got people that help me do research, and we can't find any of them. So I would love to find out what they are. And just recently, I'm sure you saw this in the news, the Import-Export Bank Charter extension was voted on. Another $142 million of your money to go to corporate welfare. Well, Mr. Cantor voted for that. Now, folks, how are we going to get our economic and fiscal house in order when we keep spending money on all these other people? When we keep giving money to businesses that can't run themselves properly? That is not how we're going to get ourselves out of trouble. Now, Mr. Marshall spoke about it earlier, getting our fiscal house in order. How would we do that? Social Security is a problem. How would we make that solvent again for those who get it? And by the way, when you hear people talk about quote-unquote entitlement spending, and they lump Social Security in with that, if you ever hear anybody say that again, would you slap them in the head for me? It's not entitlement programs when you paid into it. Right. They took that money from you with the understanding that you were going to get it back at some point. Well, they've stolen it from you. And they want to blame it on anybody and everybody else, but the fact is, Social Security, now hear me out, Social Security fundamentally, constitutionally, should not exist. But it does. And because it does, and because you have paid into it, involuntarily, I might add, you should receive the benefit that you expected to get from it. How do we do that? Well, one of the things we could do, as Mr. Marshall noted, we could bring our troops home from the 130 countries around the world they're stationed in. We could stop protecting the border between South and North Korea while our own southern border is leaking like a sieve. And we could do some other things. We could abolish some of these things that are unconstitutional. I've got 11 pages here. 11 pages of bureaus, bureaucracies, programs, departments, divisions of the federal government that should not exist. They are unconstitutional. The personal income tax division of the IRS should be abolished. The Department of Education at the federal level should be abolished. Now, I'm a substitute teacher. My wife has been teaching for 33 years. When people hear me say, well, abolish the Department of Education, you must hate schools. You must hate education. No, it's exactly because I think education is so important that we need to abolish the Federal Department of Education. It is a complete and abysmal failure. It shouldn't even exist. Department of Energy, I would abolish it. FEMA, I would abolish it. National Institutes of Health. Why are we spending tax money on this? The states can't handle it? Really? Are we that stupid people that we can't handle this at the state level? We have to have the federal government doing it for us. Office of Minority Health. Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration. I could go on. Like I said, I've got 11 pages here. You want to save some money? You want to get Social Security solvent? You want to get us back on the road to fiscal solvency? You get rid of these unconstitutional programs. Now, I'm not foolish enough to think you can just wave a magic wand and tomorrow everything's going to be all better. It's not. It's going to take some time to fix this. But the journey of 1,000 steps begins with the first one, right? You can't fix any of this if we keep doing the same thing over and over and over again. And so I'm asking you on June 12th to vote for me, to send a message to those who have abdicated their responsibilities, who have violated their oath, and who have shown that they care not a whit for the Constitution, but in fact care more for their own career advancement, and show them that you still run this country, you still run this state, and you're not going to put up with this foolishness anymore. And again, I'm asking you, look it up. This is important. This is about the future of our country. And I've done my homework. The people who are supporting me have done their homework. I'm asking you to do yours. And once you look at that voting record, you're going to find out that this Floyd Bayne guy may not be as crazy as he sounds. He might know what he's talking about. Now, back there on the table, I have a stack of my business cards that have all my contact information and my website address. I have a yellow legal pad and a pen. If you would like to get on my mailing list, the email list, put your name, email address, or phone number, any contact information. If you'd like to volunteer to do anything for the campaign, let us know. Make a note what you're willing to do. Make phone calls, go door to door, work a poll for us on election day, whatever the case may be. But again, this is not about me. I've got a friend back here with me tonight, Igor Prohorov. He's from the Ukraine. He's a naturalized citizen. He has seen what it is that Mr. Marshall and I are talking about. He's lived it. He's still got family there. And he's on my side, which says a lot to me. Talk to him. Ask me any questions you want. As with Mr. Marshall, I'll answer anything you ask me. I may not always know the right answer, in which case I'll tell you I don't know. I'll look for the answer. But ultimately, when I make a decision at the federal level, as your representative in the House, it's going to be based on this little book here, the Constitution of the United States. Is it correct or is it not? Is it a constitutional law or is it not? Not about what's best for me, not about what's going to put more money in my pocket or more power in my office, what's best for the country. That's what it has to be about. Until we start electing people like that, we're going to keep finding that we have problems in Washington, D.C. June 12th, tell your friends, tell your neighbors, tell your family, we've got to get out and vote. You've got to do it. Any questions? I pretty well covered it all. All right. Well, I'm going to stick around afterwards. If you have anything that pops into your head that you want to ask me, feel free. I'd love to talk to you. And like I said, I've got the business cards back there on the table if you want to get one of those. Thank you for having me.
Just have a couple announcements. Oh, just a recap of the mass meeting. I'm sure